Hi there, Sandra here from Createinspain. Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to be making 2 cards and hopefully showing you some interesting techniques on the way. Now my first card is going to be put on a top folding base, which I wanted to be pink, and I have pink card, so that's fine. So I'm going to set that one to one side. The second card, I wanted a kind of yellowy, goldy coloured rim to it, and I don't have any of the appropriate card, so there's an easy way around this. I've picked out one of my alcohol markers, and all I need to do is to go around the edges of the card. Relatively simple. Now, depending on the card that you're using, you might possibly have to put another piece of card on to do this. You might have to mat it again. Or, if you're not that worried, if you're sending out a lot of cards at the moment and you're really not that worried that the ink shows through on the inside, I can't imagine many people are going to complain, to be honest. So anyway, up to you. And take the chisel tip and do a couple of lines like so. I can now open the card up and do a couple of lines on here, a couple of lines on here, and you're going to get this really quite nice rim when you put your front piece on without having to have a particular coloured card in order to do it. It just makes things a little cheaper and a lot easier to get the tone on the background that you want to get. I'm going to put that to one side for the moment. Now, both of these cards are going to have some stenciled pieces put on the front. So I have, oops, got a piece of tape stuck on there that wasn't supposed to be there. I've stuck my pieces of card onto the back of the stencil ready to go. This one happens to be the exact size for the card. I will be cutting it down later on to give a border. Now, what I'm going to do with these before I actually stencil them is to emboss them. Now, if you don't have an embossing machine, don't worry about it. You don't have to do it. If you have a cutter and you can put an embossing tool in it, you could even use the stencil design to do some embossing or debossing. Never remember which it's called, if that's what you want to do. But I'm just going to run these through my embossing machine. So here I have my 2 stencils, and they're still attached to the card, but they've actually been embossed. And if I lift up, because this one's not actually stuck on the top and the bottom. It must have had traces of adhesive on here. Well, that is not what I intend. Drat. I'm going to have to do this one again, probably. Yeah, I'm going to have to do this one again. I didn't realise I had adhesive on the back of the card, and that has stuck well and truly to my design, but you can see the embossed effect from the reverse side. I'm going to have to do that with another stencil. I'll cut it out in proper stencil, plastic or just plastic. So I'm going to show you how this one is done. The other one is going to be done in exactly the same way, only with one colour. I'm going to use a gold on it. So this one is also embossed. You cannot tell from the front of it that it's embossed, but don't worry about it. I'm going to put a little spritz of water on my tile here, not much, just a bit, and I'm going to put a couple of pearl colours out. Now this is gouache from Arteza. This one is supposed to be pearl scarlet. Does that look like scarlet to you? Because it certainly doesn't look like scarlet to me, but it's a lovely rosy pink colour. And this one is pearl purple iris. Now I have the full set of these gouache, so they come with the pearls. If you don't have pearlized paint, I have also done a video of how to fake that. So you might want to have a look. I'm going to put a piece of paper under here so I don't make a mess all over my work surface, okay? I'd rather not have to clean up any more than I have to. Now it's probably quite hard to see the pearlised effect, but these pearlised paints are quite well pearlised. They're very pretty, but the colour is certainly evident at the moment. And I'll just leave that to dry while I go sort out the other stencil that I managed to wreck. I've cut out another stencil for the honeycomb, and I cut it out of transparent plastic. Now, I cut it out from this because I happen to have a piece to hand and I thought I'd just use it. But I don't recommend using the clear one. The reason for that is that it's very difficult to see it when it's on your mat and you can spend ages trying to get it off. I would suggest that you use the coloured ones. These are the folders of the type that I'm using. They're very cheap. Packet of 10 will cost typically something like a couple of euros, and they are pretty good for stencils because obviously being plastic you can wash them, and it's definitely cheaper than buying proper stencil plastic. They're not quite as thick as that, but they'll do the job. I've run it through the embossing machine, and this time I'm going to use a gold paint. This again is the Arteza gouache, and I am just going to put some paint down there, give it a little spritz with some water, and take one of my little brushes, work it into the brush. I might have added a drop too much water there, so I'm still getting good colour. Now the other thing I would say, this is looking a bit muddy simply because my embossing plates for my machine were obviously a little bit grubby. I need to give those a good clean. So this is going to do the job quite nicely. Put in the colour. I think I want to add a touch more paint to that mix. I did add a little bit too much water, so I'm going to really strengthen up the paint. And so I'm going over the embossed stencil. So this gives it the colour, but it also gives it a little bit of dimension. And I don't mind if it's slightly faded at one end or the other, that's perfectly alright. Good thing about using the gouache for the stenciling is your stencil's not going to come to any harm. If it's a plastic stencil, you can wash it later. So I can now take this off and set this aside to dry. I'm going to trim down my front piece so I can put my front panel onto my card base. I'm going to complete this card first. So the item I have here is a print and cut, and I know it's looking very pale at the moment. This design came from Pixabay. Now the first thing I'm going to do with this is to trim off the antenna on the phone because that dates it a little bit. Okay, we don't have antennas on our phones these days. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. Now I have another one of these, you can see a little more clearly. Now this is one that I actually improved the image simply by opening it up and increasing all the colours in the spectrum just across the board, just increasing the amount of colour in it. And you can see it looks a bit more interesting than this somewhat dull one. But the other thing that you can sometimes end up with is a bad print on your printer if your ink suddenly runs low and you didn't realise it, or if you're anything like me, you avoid putting ink in your printer because it's dearer than liquid gold. So this is a paler print where I didn't adjust the colours, but I'm going to show you how you can actually improve the colours on this without having to reprint it, because if you've done a print and cut, then you really don't want to have to do it again if you can help it. So there are quite a few different things you can do to make it a lot more interesting. Now the first way of doing this is with alcohol markers, and so you want to get some markers which are roughly in the right colour spectrum. So yes, that one would be, and probably that one. Yep, okay. And you can go over the design, just adding some extra colour because this is going to make a big difference to the overall effect. Now, you don't have to religiously colour everything in, but just put some extra colour in where the colour is already. It's telling you which bits need to be coloured in. You don't have to work at it. It's also quite good as a technique for learning how to shade in the first place, because you have your shades there, you just don't have them there very well. So that's probably it for that light blue. Now I've got a tap here, and what I would do is use a metallic silver pen to colour in the tap. I've also got a little transparent glitter pen, and I'm just going to put a little bit of glitter in there as well, like that. I'm going to put some glitter on some of the water bubbles as well. For the mat underneath here, I'm going to add some more colour because it's looking a little bit faded, and then use the green one to come in underneath the feet of Bath because you'd have shadow there. Just put in some darker areas. And blend them out with the blue. You know, this doesn't have to be rocket science, it doesn't have to be amazing colouring. It just needs a little bit of oomph on it. You can see that looks far nicer than that one does already. We haven't actually done a great deal to it. We're going to have some darker bits. Like that. Probably a bit of shading just here. There we go, that'll do. And then come in with the other one. As this dries, it will get more mellow. So there we go. You don't need to do an awful lot of work on it. Underneath the hairline, a little bit of peach added in, a little bit under chin, and down the bottom of, or the top of the neck I should say. If I want to, I can add some shadows to the bath. And like that. A bit under the rim. Blend this out of it. This is giving a slightly sort of peachy element to it. And then once I've done that, I can add a white highlight when that's dry. Don't do it when it's still slightly damp because it won't look as sharp. It'll just muddy into the rest of the ink. And this is my white jelly roll. So I'm going to put a little highlight on the lip there, where there was one to start with. You can add highlight to the eyes if you want to. And my glitter pen, I'm going to use this to go around the side of the foam to add a bit of glitter to that. Jazz that up just a little bit. There we go. So we have our lady in the bath and she's going to go on our card, and I'm going to raise her up on some foam. There we go. Now I've got my sentiment here just doing a spot of scrubbing, which is just a little bit of fun. And I'm not going to prop that up, I'm just going to use a little bit of glue. And there we go, we're almost finished. I just want a few little diamante bits. Card finished, and I hope you like that one. So the next one that we're doing is completely different. So we have the card base, and this time I have some bees. And I thought this was a really, really fun one. So first of all, I'm actually going to put my sentiment on. It says be happy, B-double-E, for the bee, of course. So I'm just going to pop some glue on the back of this and stick my sentiment down first. And the reason for that is I want to make sure I leave room for it, because this is going to be quite a filled card. So pop my sentiment down on the bottom there, and I know I've got it in place and it's not a problem. Now this particular bee I'm not really going to do anything much with. I am going to do a little bit of shading on it, but relatively little. And that's because I want to shade on the wings just a little bit. There we go. A little bit of shading underneath his eyes. Do a little bit of scribbling underneath his tummy, but this is, you know, very, very subtle, and a little bit underneath his chin there, and round the neck. A tiny bit of shade under the pupils. There we go, he's done. That's quick. So this one is going to be propped up on some double-sided foam tape. So this bee is going to go up in the top right hand corner like so, and then this one is going to go in front of him, but he's going to be raised up a lot more. However, I want to do a bit more colouring on this one, and this time I'm going to have a go at using some pencils to do it, because not everyone wants to use alcohol markers. So why not? These are Arteza colouring pencils. I quite like them. Now, the one thing you do need with colouring pencils is a pencil sharpener. The one that I have isn't an expensive one, but it has two different hole sizes, and this one uses the smaller hole. And you do want to make sure that your pencils are sharp, because it makes it a lot easier. Now, the second thing with pencils is you do not want to press hard, for a couple of different reasons. One of them being, if you press hard, you'll probably break the lead. And also, if you press hard, you will leave marks in your card or your paper, and it won't look as good. The ideal colour of pencils is that you build up colour and you do it gradually. You don't really do it all in one fell swoop. But you just want a very light touch. Now I use circular movements and just go around the edges where I want to put some extra colour. Now the advantage of doing some colouring over a print and cut, a couple of them, you might possibly already have shading in it, but maybe it's just not pronounced enough. So you can go over those areas and make them brighter or darker, whatever it is that you want to do. But the other thing is, it's almost like having your picture done with a watercolour wash over it already, and you're just adding the finishing touches. You don't have to do all the hard work of colouring in all of it. You can just add bits. Now, I'm hoping that the camera can pick that up and that you can see the difference in the shading. So there is definitely a brighter colour on those wings than there was before. I'm going to do the same on the body, but on the body I'm going to go around the edges of the yellow stripe, just avoiding the middle. So I'm going to add a little bit of colour where the fingers fold around things, like that, and put some shading on the bottom of that there. And this one, a little bit of shading around the top rim where the glove is like folded over. Some shading around there, that little finger would be shaded. Around there, a little bit there. There we go. It's just adding a bit of extra oomph to it. Do the same on the shoes. The other thing that I want to put on here is a little bit of my sparkle pen. And so, just going to do a few little marks on here. What I would also suggest is that you make the black blacker. Now, you could do it with a pencil or you could do it with an alcohol marker. I would choose to do it with an alcohol marker because it's not that I need shading, it's just I want it darker. But what I wouldn't do is use black. What I would use in this particular instance is a charcoal grey, I think it is. Yeah, charcoal grey. So although this is going to look black, it actually isn't black. If I get the black out, I think that's the black. Yeah, this is black. And I don't know if you can tell the difference on here, but there is a difference to it. It is black as opposed to a very dark grey. So what I would do is use that to go over. I won't go down the actual antenna because I will probably mess it up because it's a very fine line, but also the antenna wouldn't come across as being as dark. What am I saying? This is a cartoon bee. Okay, so I would do the nose, most definitely, and leave a little bit of a gap because we're going to put a white highlight in there anyway. And then I'll just go over the rest of the body. My card is finished. So this one was on 1 layer of foam tape, this was on 2 layers of foam tape. And I think that is quite a sweet card. My thanks go to Pixabay for the images. If you put in a search in Pixabay and you go for bathtub or bees, you will find these images, although I have put the cut files in the file down below. I've also given you the files for this stencil, for the one for doing these bubbles, and indeed for a few alternatives within the file. And I think both of these cards have turned out really well. I like them. So I hope you actually get round to making them, and I will see you again soon. Please have a look at my other videos. There are over 700 on my channel, and I do lots of different ideas for things like saving money on your crafting, alternatives, making stamps, and a lot of other things. Thanks for watching. Take care now.